The first signal arrived at exactly 2:30 a.m. UTC, and at first, nobody on Earth thought it meant anything important. Deep space monitoring stations had recorded strange transmissions before. Random radio bursts, cosmic interference, even signals from dying stars. But this one was different. It came from a formation of massive objects entering the solar system at impossible speed. Within minutes, observatories across the world confirmed the same terrifying truth. They were ships, hundreds of them. Massive alien vessels, each larger than entire cities, moving in perfect formation toward Earth. The United Nations Emergency Council was assembled within 30 minutes. Military commanders from every major nation joined the call, their faces pale under the cold light of command rooms. Nobody spoke for several seconds, because the images being streamed onto the central screen were undeniable. The alien fleet had not come to observe, they had come to invade. Even more terrifying was the message that followed. At 2:47 a.m., every satellite, every communication tower, every device connected to the internet suddenly received the same transmission. Phones vibrated. Televisions switched on by themselves. Radios crackled to life, and then the voice came. Cold, mechanical, completely emotionless. Planet Earth. You are now under control of the Zareth Dominion. Resistance is pointless. Your planet contains valuable biological resources. Your species will be preserved only where useful. The message repeated 3 times. Across the world, panic spread like wildfire. Cities woke up to chaos. News stations interrupted every broadcast. Military bases scrambled fighter jets. Governments tried desperately to calm their citizens, but nothing could calm the fear people felt when they looked up into the night sky. Because now, the ships were visible. Hundreds of enormous dark shapes hovering just beyond the atmosphere, blotting out the stars. The invasion had begun. At 3:05 a.m., the first strike hit. A single beam of green light dropped from the largest ship and struck the Pacific Ocean. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water exploded upward in a tower of steam miles high. Sensors across the planet went wild. The energy released was equal to several nuclear weapons. And that was only one ship. Within seconds, dozens more beams fired across the planet. Military bases vanished. Satellites disintegrated. Entire fleets of aircraft were destroyed before they even left the ground. Humanity had never seen technology like this before. The alien ships moved like predators. Fast, precise, merciless. But the strangest part of the invasion was something the aliens didn't know. Something they had completely overlooked. Because while the alien commanders believed they were facing a primitive species with outdated weapons, they had no idea how dangerous humans truly were. At NORAD's Underground Command Center in Colorado, General Marcus Halle watched the invasion unfold on a wall of holographic displays. Cities burning, ships descending, communication networks collapsing. A younger officer turned toward him nervously. "Sir?" "They've already destroyed most orbital defenses. At this rate, we won't last a day." General Halle didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at a timer on the screen. 3:13 a.m. He exhaled slowly. Then he said something that confused everyone in the room. "Good." The officer blinked. "Sir." Halle turned toward the command table. "Activate protocola." "Iron Gate." Several officers froze. One of them whispered, "Sir, that protocol has never been used." "I know," Halle replied calmly. Across the planet, hidden facilities buried deep underground began receiving the same encrypted signal. A signal that had never been activated before. Weapons systems came online. Satellites that no country had ever publicly acknowledged suddenly powered up in orbit. Stealth submarines changed course beneath the oceans. Experimental aircraft rolled out of secret hangars. Humanity had spent decades preparing for a war that might never happen. And now, it finally had. Meanwhile, aboard the alien flagship hovering above Earth, Commander Threx watched the planet below with complete confidence. He had conquered dozens of civilizations across the galaxy. Most of them had been far more advanced than these fragile humans. Primitive world. Primitive weapons. Primitive defenses. The entire conquest would be finished before sunrise. Begin planetary suppression. Threx ordered. More beams fired. Cities burnt. Human military forces fought desperately but were overwhelmed in minutes. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then, something unexpected happened. At exactly 3:21 a.m., every alien ship across the fleet suddenly received a new signal. At first, the alien systems assumed it was just human interference, but the signal kept repeating, a single short message, broadcast directly into the Alia communication network. Commander Threx frowned. Translated. The ship's artificial intelligence processed the message for several seconds. Then, it displayed the result. The translated message appeared on the main screen. Just 5 words. You have 3 hours left. For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then, several alien officers began laughing. 3 hours. Humans believed they could stop the invasion in 3 hours. Commander Threx shook his head slowly. Primitive arrogance. But as the alien fleet prepared to finish the conquest of Earth, they had no idea that the countdown had already begun, and in exactly 3 hours. The invaders who came to conquer humanity would be the ones begging for mercy. We arrived in the Sol system, a silent armada of world breakers. Our mission simple. Subjugation. For millennia my species, the Cathar, had brought countless worlds to heal. Earth was just another primitive jewel to be added to our Emperor's crown. Our vanguard ships sliced through their upper atmosphere, expecting scattered, panicked resistance from their fledgling space programs. We anticipated their primitive nuclear weapons, their projectile-based defenses. Our simulations predicted a total planetary surrender within 3 of their solar cycles. We were conquerors. We were gods. We were utterly, catastrophically wrong. The first surprise came not from the ground, but from the void itself. As our scout ships began their orbital insertion, shimmering portals of pure energy tore open the fabric of space around them. From these rifts emerged sleek, impossibly agile fighters, unlike any design our archives had ever recorded. They moved with a grace that defied physics, their weapons firing lances of coherent light that bypassed our shields as if they were mere suggestions. Our scout wing, comprising 20 of our finest vessels, was annihilated in less than 10 minutes. On the command bridge of my flagship, the Harbinger of Sorrow, a stunned silence fell. My tactical officer Zyler turned to me, his mandibles quivering. Commander, their energy signatures, they're off the scale. We can't track their FTL jumps. They're not folding space. They're punching through it. Panic is not a Cathar trait, but a cold dread began to seep into my command deck. We had grossly underestimated this species. I gave the order for a full-scale orbital bombardment of their major population centers. A brutal, but effective, tactic that had broken the will of 100 civilizations before. Our massive cannons charged, unleashing city-destroying plasma bolts. But they never reached their targets, a planetary-wide energy grid, previously invisible to our scans. Floret 2 life, a latticework of brilliant blue energy enveloped the entire planet, catching our volleys and absorbing them completely. Warning klaxons blared as the absorbed energy was redirected, fired back at our fleet in a single, devastating beam that cleaved one of our battlecruisers in 2. We were bleeding. We were fighting a ghost that hit back with the force of a supernova. I ordered a ground invasion, hoping our legions of grizzled warriors could succeed where our ships had failed. Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, landing in what our intel marked as sparsely populated zones. They were met not by disorganized militias, but by legions of soldiers encased in powered armor that made our own infantry look primitive. These human titans stood 30 feet tall, armed with particle accelerators and vibroblades that cut through our armored transports like butter. The reports from my ground commanders were disjointed, filled with terror. They spoke of soldiers who moved faster than the eye could see, of psionic attacks that turned our warriors' minds to jelly, of nanite swarms that consumed our war machines from the inside out. In a desperate move, I authorized the deployment of the World End, a biological agent designed to eradicate all native life. The canisters were launched, set to aerosolize in the upper atmosphere. They were not by ships, but by a single human figure, floating in the vacuum of space, wreathed in golden energy. Our sensors went haywire. The being simply raised a hand, and our canisters, filled with the most potent plague in the galaxy, were rendered inert, transformed into harmless, inert dust. The being then turned its gaze towards my flagship. I felt it in my mind, a voice that was not a voice, a presence that filled every corner of my consciousness. The transmission cut out, replaced by a visual feed sent directly to my command chair. It was a human, an old man in a simple suit, sitting in an office. Behind him, a window looked out, not onto an earthly city, but onto the swirling vortex of a galactic nebula. "Commander," he began, his voice calm, yet carrying an authority that dwarfed my own emperor's. "My name is Silas, and on behalf of the Terran Ascendancy, I must ask you to surrender. You see, this isn't our first war. We've been fighting across galaxies for longer than your species has been. We seeded this planet, our ancestral home, as a sanctuary. A quiet place to retire. We hoped no one would ever bother us here." He gestured, and the view screen changed, showing star charts, fleets of ships that dwarfed my entire armada, and technologies that were millennia ahead of our own. He showed us wars against beings of pure energy, against dimensional horrors, against civilizations that consumed stars for fuel. "Your invasion," Silas continued with a slight, almost pitying smile, "has been a nostalgic, if slightly irritating, interruption to our peace. We have held back. The forces you have faced are, in essence, our local police and a few retired veterans who got bored. You do not want to see what our actual military looks like." On my bridge, my officers stared, their arrogance shattered. We had not invaded a primitive world. We had stumbled into the quiet retirement home of the galaxy's deadliest warriors. We had kicked a hornet's nest the size of a galaxy. I looked at the image of the serene, impossibly powerful human, and then at my burning fleet. I did the only thing I could. I transmitted our unconditional surrender. Earth was not a prize to be won. It was a lesson to be learned. A terrifying, humbling lesson that would be etched into the annals of Cathar history forever. Some sleeping giants are best left undisturbed. For several seconds, the alien fleet's scanners struggled to identify the new objects rising from Earth's atmosphere. They moved faster than any aircraft the invaders had seen before, leaving thin streaks of white heat behind them as they tore through the upper layers of the sky. At first, the alien computers classified them as large missiles, but the data quickly proved that assumption wrong. Missiles did not maneuver like this. Commander Threx leaned forward in his command chair as the holographic display zoomed in on the approaching objects. The image sharpened, revealing sleek black shapes covered in unfamiliar armor plating. "Identify those vessels," Threx ordered. The ship's artificial intelligence scanned the incoming craft again. "Unknown classification," the system replied. That answer alone made several alien officers uneasy. Humanity was supposed to be primitive. Yet somehow, these ships were reaching orbit faster than the alien fleet's own interceptors. Within moments, the first group of human craft arrived. They didn't slow down. "Destroy them," Threx snapped. Alien defense turrets rotated instantly. Under normal circumstances, the incoming vessels would have been vaporized before getting close, but the human ships moved with terrifying agility. They dodged. One plasma blast narrowly missed a human craft, passing so close that its energy trail briefly illuminated the hull, and the results confused everyone. The ship's outer armor wasn't just metal. It was layered with energy-diffusing material designed specifically to weaken directed energy weapons. Someone on Earth had built these ships to fight advanced alien technology. "Commander," one officer said quietly, "these humans have prepared for this." Threx's eyes narrowed. The first human craft suddenly opened fire. Thin beams of white light erupted from their wings, slicing across the hull of a nearby alien destroyer. At first, the attack seemed harmless. The beams were small compared to the massive weapons used by the alien fleet, but the damage quickly became obvious. Wherever the beams touched, the alien ship's outer armor began melting. Corrosive energy weapons, the ship's AI announced, hull integrity failing. Before the destroyer could react, another human craft fired a pair of compact missiles. They struck directly into the weakened armor. The alien ship exploded seconds later. Across the fleet, more human strike fighters joined the battle. Hundreds of them. They moved like predators, weaving between the massive alien vessels, targeting shield gaps and exposed systems with incredible precision. One alien cruiser attempted to fire a wide plasma barrage to clear them away. Several fighters released small glowing spheres that drifted into the path of the attack. The moment the plasma barrage touched the spheres, a blinding flash erupted. A gravitational distortion wave spread outward. Even the alien officers looked stunned. Gravity manipulation technology, one whispered. Impossible. Below them, Earth continued launching more reinforcements. Massive aircraft carriers hidden beneath the ocean had opened their launch decks, releasing wave after wave of orbital fighters. Within minutes, the number of human vessels in orbit doubled. Commander Threx finally stood from his chair. This battle was no longer a simple conquest. Deploy the war drones, he ordered. From the lower sections of several alien capital ships, large compartments opened. Thousands of small metallic spheres poured into space. Alien combat drones. They spread across orbit like a swarm of mechanical insects. The human fighters immediately changed formation. Instead of attacking the larger ships, they began engaging the drones. The battle turned chaotic. Bright flashes of energy lit up the darkness as drones and fighters collided in a deadly dance. Human pilots twisted their craft through impossible maneuvers, dodging plasma fire while striking back with precision weapons. One fighter pilot flew directly through a cloud of drones before releasing a spinning device behind him. The device detonated moments later. A massive electromagnetic burst disabled dozens of drones. Instantly, they drifted helplessly through space as human fighters eliminated them one by one. Still, the alien fleet had numbers on their side. More drones launched. More ships moved into position. Slowly, the humans began taking losses. One fighter was caught by a plasma blast and vanished in a bright explosion. But for every human craft destroyed, several alien machines were lost as well. Back in the flagship, Commander Threx felt the balance of the battle shifting in ways he had not expected. His fleet was still stronger, but this species was far more dangerous than intelligence reports had predicted, and something about their tactics was deeply unsettling. They fought like warriors who had trained for this exact moment. Another officer spoke up. Commander. Long-range sensors are detecting additional launches from the planet. Threx turned toward the display. New signals were rising from Earth. But these were not fighters. They were enormous. What are those? He demanded. The AI analyzed the readings. Then it answered. Human orbital defense platforms. Threx's expression darkened because the number appearing on the display kept increasing. Humanity was not just defending their planet. They were turning it into a fortress, and the 3-hour countdown was still running. Across the alien fleet, the first signs of unease began to spread. What had started as a routine planetary conquest was quickly turning into something far more complicated. The humans were not collapsing in fear. They were not. Instead, every minute that passed seemed to reveal another hidden layer of defenses the alien commanders had never anticipated. Commander Threx stared at the growing cluster of massive objects rising from Earth. The newly launched platforms were enormous compared to the small strike fighters. Each one was a dark, armored structure surrounded by rotating weapon rings and glowing energy cores. They moved slowly, but their sheer size made them impossible to ignore. "Scan those platforms," Threx ordered. The flagship's systems immediately began analyzing the incoming structures. Multiple weapon systems detected. The artificial intelligence reported. Magnetic acceleration cannons, missile batteries, high-energy beam arrays. One of the alien officers leaned closer to his console. "Commander, these are not temporary weapons. These structures were built long ago." Threx already suspected that you did not build dozens of orbital defense platforms in a few hours. These machines had been hidden for years, waiting silently for a moment like this. Below them, Earth's atmosphere lit up again as another platform pushed into orbit. The massive structure unfolded like a mechanical flower. Huge armored plates shifted outward, revealing rows of enormous cannons. For a moment, the platform remained still. Then it fired. A beam of blinding white energy shot across space and struck one of the alien cruisers. The effect was immediate. Instead of simply damaging the shields, the beam drilled straight through them like they barely existed. The alien vessel's hull cracked open along its centerline, glowing molten orange before tearing apart in a violent explosion. Even the alien crew aboard the flagship flinched at the brightness. That weapon just penetrated a Class 7 shield, an officer whispered. That is impossible, another said. Those shields can survive antimatter strikes. But the destroyed cruiser drifting in pieces proved otherwise. The human platforms were not using ordinary weapons. Commander Threx slammed one clawed hand onto the command rail. All vessels concentrate fire on those platforms. Destroy them immediately. Dozens of alien ships responded at once. Plasma cannons rotated and unleashed a storm of energy toward the nearest human defense platform. The platform's shields activated instantly. A glowing blue dome surrounded the structure as the alien bombardment struck. For several seconds, the platform endured the attack. Then cracks of energy began forming across the shield. Back on Earth, inside a heavily fortified command center, buried deep underground, military officers watched the same battle unfold on massive screens. One of the analysts spoke urgently. Platform 7's shield strength is dropping fast. General Marcus Hawley stood silently behind them. How long can it hold? He asked. 30 seconds, maybe less. Hawley nodded once. Then let's make those 30 seconds count. He pressed a control on the command table, high above the battlefield. Several human strike fighters suddenly changed direction and accelerated toward the alien ships attacking the platform. They flew straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Are they insane? One alien officer said as the fighters approached. But the humans didn't fire weapons. Instead, each fighter released a small metallic cylinder before veering away at full speed. The cylinders drifted quietly for a moment. Then they activated. Bright rings of energy expanded outward in perfect circles. The rings passed through several alien ships simultaneously. At first, nothing happened. Then every affected vessel experienced the same catastrophic failure. Their shields collapsed. Their weapon systems shut down. Entire sections of the ships went dark. The alien flagship's AI immediately analyzed the event. Quantum disruption devices detected, it announced. The effect lasted only seconds. But that was long enough. The human orbital platform fired again. Its massive beam cut across space and struck one of the disabled alien battleships. T-ship didn't even have time to raise its shields. It exploded instantly. Moments later, another platform fired from the opposite side of Earth. Then another. Suddenly, the battlefield was filled with enormous beams of destructive energy crossing through the alien fleet. Several alien ships were destroyed within seconds. Commander Threx felt something unfamiliar rising inside him. Frustration. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were coordinating every weapon perfectly. Every distraction, every strike, every sacrifice. Even the damaged platform under heavy bombardment managed to fire one final beam before its shield collapsed completely. The blast crippled another alien cruiser. Fragments of burning metal drifted silently through orbit. Finally, the alien ships managed to destroy the platform with a concentrated barrage. The massive human structure shattered into thousands of glowing pieces. But the victory felt hollow, because by the time the debris cleared, 4 more human platforms had finished reaching orbit, and all of them were already charging their weapons. Back inside the alien flagship, an officer spoke again. Commander, we are losing ships faster than predicted. Threx stared at the tactical display. The alien fleet still outnumbered the human forces, but the difference was shrinking. Slowly, steadily, and worst of all, the human countdown message still echoed in his mind. You have 3 hours left. He turned toward the central screen. How much time has passed since the invasion began? The AI answered immediately. 48 minutes. Less than 1 hour, and the alien fleet had already lost over 30 ships. For the first time in his long career of conquering worlds, Commander Threx began to consider a possibility he had never faced before. What if this planet was not prey? What if Earth was a trap? Meanwhile, deep inside a classified military facility hidden beneath the Antarctic ice, a massive door slowly began to open. Behind it stood something humanity had never revealed to the world, a weapon that had never been used. A machine designed specifically for a war against enemies from the stars, and its activation sequence had just begun. Far beneath the frozen surface of Antarctica, deep inside a facility that did not exist on any map, the massive chamber slowly filled with a low mechanical hum. The enormous doors that had remained sealed for decades were finally opening, revealing a structure so large it almost touched the ceiling of the underground cavern. Thick frost cracked and fell from its surface as power flowed through ancient cables connected to its base. Technicians moved quickly around the control stations, their voices calm but tense. Primary reactor coming online. Magnetic containment stable. Orbital targeting systems synchronizing with global network. At the center of the chamber stood the weapon itself. It looked less like a machine and more like a towering black pillar surrounded by rings of rotating metal. Its surface was covered in layers of armor, designed to withstand unimaginable forces. For years it had remained silent, a secret known only to a handful of military leaders. Now, for the first time, it was waking up. Thousands of kilometers away, inside NORAD's command center, General Marcus Halle watched the activation signal appear on the main display. One of the officers turned toward him. "Sir, Project Atlas is coming online." Halle nodded slowly. About time. Back in orbit, the battle had grown even more chaotic. The alien fleet had reorganized into tighter formations, trying to reduce the damage caused by the human defense platforms. Massive alien battleships had begun focusing their fire on the orbital structures, determined to eliminate them before they could fire again. One by one, several platforms were destroyed under the intense bombardment. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as huge fragments drifted away from the shattered defenses. But every time the aliens destroyed one platform, two more beams from other platforms struck their fleet. The human defenses were fighting like a fortress that refused to fall. Commander Threx watched as another cruiser vanished in a flash of white energy. His claws tightened around the command rail. "Launch heavy assault vessels," he ordered. Several enormous alien warships moved forward from the rear of the formation. These ships were far larger than the cruisers and destroyers already fighting in orbit. Their hulls were covered with thick armor plates and powerful shield generators, designed for long sieges. If the humans wanted a battle, these ships would crush their defenses through sheer power. The heavy vessels began charging their main weapons. Huge spheres of green energy formed along their hulls, growing brighter with every passing second. One of the alien officers smiled slightly. "Those platforms will not survive this." The first heavy weapon fired. A massive beam of energy slammed into one of the human platforms, instantly overwhelming its shield. The structure cracked apart, its central core exploding in a brilliant burst of fire. Another platform followed seconds later. For the first time since the battle began, the human defenses started losing ground. Like on Earth, military commanders watched the losses with grim expressions. Platform 11 destroyed. Platform 9 critical damage. The alien fleet was pushing forward. General Halle remained calm. "Let them think they're winning," he said quietly. One of the younger officers looked confused. Sir Halle gestured toward the countdown timer still running on the screen. 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 44 seconds remaining. "We just need time." High above Earth, the alien fleet continued its advance. The heavy warships moved closer to the planet, their massive weapons firing repeatedly. Human fighters tried to slow them down, but the ships were too well protected. One human fighter squadron attempted a close attack on the lead battleship. Plasma cannons blasted several of the small craft out of space before they could even fire. The remaining fighters scattered. Commander Threx allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. The humans had fought harder than expected, but in the end they were still outmatched. His fleet was slowly pushing through their defenses. Another officer approached. "Commander, human fighter resistance is decreasing." "Good," Threx replied. But before he could say anything else, a new alert appeared across to every alien display. A powerful energy surge had been detected coming from Earth's southern hemisphere. The source was unlike anything their sensors had seen before. "Commander," the AI reported. "Unknown energy output, rising rapidly." Threx turned toward the screen. "What kind of weapon produces that signal?" The AI paused briefly. "Energy output exceeds known planetary weapon systems." Across the alien fleet, sensors began focusing on Antarctica. Deep beneath the ice, Project Atlas had finished its activation sequence. Inside the underground chamber, the enormous ring surrounding the black pillar began spinning faster. Bright lines of white energy spread across its surface as the reactor reached full power. The technicians stepped back from their consoles. Atlas reactor at 100%. Targeting locked. Orbital trajectory confirmed. In NORAD, the signal finally appeared. The room fell silent as the massive weapon prepared to fire. One officer looked toward General Hale. "Sir, once we fire this, there's no hiding it anymore." Hale stared at the display showing the alien fleet hovering above Earth. "Good," he said. "Let them see it. Back in orbit." Commander Threx suddenly felt a strange vibration pass through the flagship. At first he assumed it was another human attack. Then the sensors screamed. "Commander!" An officer shouted. A massive energy spike detected. Before anyone could react, the darkness above Antarctica split open. A colossal beam of white light erupted from the planet's surface. It shot into space like a spear, and it was heading directly toward the alien fleet. For decades, we stared at the stars and wondered, are we alone? Then they arrived. Not in peace, but with fire and fury, an armada of shadows blotting out our sun. Their ships, sleek and menacing, filled our skies, their intentions clear. They saw a primitive world, ripe for conquest. They saw scattered tribes, easy to divide and conquer. They saw Earth as a prize, and its inhabitants as little more than insects. They were wrong. So very, very wrong. Across the globe, screens flickered to life, not with news anchors and panicked reports, but with a singular, unified command interface. In hardened bunkers buried deep beneath continents, men and women took their stations. This was the day they had trained for, the scenario they had simulated 1,000 times. Project Atlas was online. Years of secret collaboration, a planet united under a single, desperate purpose, were about to be unleashed. The order was given, simple and clear. Engage. From a hidden installation in the barren expanse of the Gobi Desert, a section of the Earth itself slid away. A colossal energy cannon, a testament to human ingenuity born from fear, rose from the dust. It hummed with power, drawing energy from the planet's very core. On the bridge of the alien flagship, Commander Threx watched his invasion force position itself for the final, crushing blow. He smirked. This would be over before the planet's next rotation. Then, a light brighter than 1,000 suns erupted from the planet's surface. A beam of pure, incandescent energy tore through the vacuum of space at impossible speeds, before Threx's multifaceted eyes could even process the warning klaxons. The beam struck one of his largest dreadnoughts. A vessel that had shattered moons simply vanished. Not exploded, not creeplet. It ceased to exist, erased from reality in a silent, blinding flash. Shock rippled through the alien command network. What was that? Their sensors screamed with incomprehensible energy readings. Panic began to set in. This wasn't in their intelligence reports. The humans weren't supposed to have this kind of power. Threx stared at the void where his ship once was, his arrogance evaporating into cold dread. He had judged this world by its primitive radio waves, not by the fierce, defiant spirit of its people. "Fire again," the human commander ordered. Her voice calm and steady. "Coordinate with fighter squadrons. Target their command ships. Let's break their spine." From lunar bases and orbital platforms, swarms of advanced starfighters, the Vipers, launched in perfect formation. They were fast, agile, and armed with weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien technology. They were the scalpel to Atlas's sledgehammer. The battlefield became a maelstrom of light and chaos. The Atlas cannon fired again, and another alien capital ship was atomized. The remaining fleet scattered, trying to escape the weapon's terrifying reach. But there was no escape. The human vipers were upon them, weaving through their disorganized formations, their plasma cannons ripping through holes. The aliens, so accustomed to being the predators, were now the prey, hunted in their own skies by a species they had dismissed. Retreat. All ships, retreat. Threx roared, his voice cracking with a fear he hadn't felt in centuries. But the human strategy was flawless. The fighter squadrons herded the fleeing ships, pushing them back into the firing line of Project Atlas. It was a perfectly executed trap. The planetary weapon acted as the anvil, and the fighters were the hammer, smashing the alien armada into cosmic dust. One by one, the invaders were picked off, their dying screams silent in the void. In the aftermath, the silence was deafening. The skies above Earth were clear once more, glittering with the debris of a shattered invasion force. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, the last surviving vessel, Threx gazed at the blue marble below. It no longer looked like a prize. It looked like a fortress, a graveyard. He had come seeking conquest and found only oblivion. He had underestimated humanity's will to survive. He had underestimated their unity. He had underestimated their fury. The message was sent back to the alien homeworld. A final, desperate warning carried on a wave of failure. Do not go to Earth. The alien fleet was in chaos. Ships that had once moved with the precision of a predatory organism were now scattered in all directions. Engines damaged, weapons offline, shields flickering. Commander Threx could barely believe the sight before him. Hundreds of ships, meticulously coordinated just hours ago, were now drifting helplessly, some tumbling end over end, others engulfed in the blinding explosions of human orbital fire. The invaders had faced resistance before, but never like this. Never with such overwhelming precision and destructive capability. Reports poured in from the flagship's sensors, each more alarming than the last. The humans had not only anticipated every maneuver but had exploited weaknesses the invaders didn't even know existed. Entire squadrons had been annihilated by energy beams that cut through the void like swords of light. Fleets that had believed themselves invincible were disintegrating under tactics no alien strategists had ever conceived. It was as if the planet itself had risen against them, its defenses perfectly synchronized with the fighters and orbital platforms. "Commander," one officer said, voice trembling, "our losses are exceeding projections. We cannot hold formation. The human assault is too coordinated." Threx's gaze hardened. "Then adapt," he said sharply. "Change tactics. Focus on the strongest targets first. Do not let them consolidate." But even as he spoke, new information arrived. The human orbital platforms were no longer just firing at isolated ships. They were coordinating attacks across vast distances, forcing the alien fleet into an impossible trap. One cruiser attempted to escape toward the rear of the formation, only to be intercepted by a pair of stealth fighters emerging from Earth's upper atmosphere. Within moments, the vessel was disabled, tumbling helplessly through space. Thrax's confidence began to erode. His eyes, cold and calculating only moments ago, now betrayed unease. He had underestimated this species. They were not primitive. They were adaptable, ruthless, and willing to sacrifice themselves strategically to protect their world. The invaders had expected panic, surrender, or at least confusion. Instead, they faced relentless precision, a force that struck with calculated brutality yet somehow preserved the structures and strategies that allowed humanity to strike again and again. In desperation, Threx sent a transmission across the fleet, a signal meant to rally the remaining ships. It was meant to be authoritative, intimidating a reminder of the fleet's supremacy. Instead, the message went largely unanswered. Officers ignored commands, weapons systems failed, and ships refused to maintain their positions. The human assault had not only damaged the fleet physically, but had broken its cohesion. On Earth, General Marcus Halla monitored the battlefield with a steady gaze. The countdown clock ticked down relentlessly. 0 hours, 57 minutes, and 12 seconds remaining. The humans had already inflicted catastrophic losses on the alien forces, but they were not stopping. Every destroyed ship, every intercepted cruiser, and every fired beam was part of a calculated rhythm, a dance that only humans seemed capable of performing. Even the orbital platforms, massive and seemingly immobile, adjusted their firing arcs with incredible precision. They struck where needed, when needed, never wasting energy, never giving the invaders a moment to recover. Back in the alien flagship, Threx's frustration reached a boiling point. "Why are they not surrendering?" he demanded, voice echoing through the bridge. "They are a primitive species. They cannot hope to match us." An officer, pale and trembling, responded quietly. "Commander, they are not behaving like primitives. They are engineers, tacticians, and warriors all at once. Every move is calculated, every counterattack anticipated." Threx ground his teeth. "We still outnumber them," he shouted. "We still have the power to annihilate this world." But even as he spoke, new readings arrived. Alien sensors detected something they had not expected. Earth itself seemed to be generating defensive energy, magnetic pulses synchronized with the human fleet, amplifying attacks and disrupting shields. The planet was no longer a passive battlefield. It had become a participant, a weapon in its own right. Panic began to spread among the alien officers. Ships that had once exuded confidence were now floundering. Orders were ignored, formations fractured, and morale plummeted. The realization was undeniable. The humans were not just defending their planet, they were dominating the battlefield with an intelligence and ferocity the invaders had never encountered. Then, in the midst of the chaos, a communication ping echoed across the fleet. It was different from the first transmission. This one was urgent, pleading, almost fearful. One of the alien officers intercepted the signal and translated it. "Commander, they're requesting guidance from us. They are asking for help." Threx stared at the console, disbelief etching across his face. "What is this?" he demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "It appears some of our subordinate commanders are signaling surrender before we even lose more ships." Threx's mind raced. This had never happened before. He had conquered worlds. He had crushed civilizations. He had never faced a species that could inflict such damage in such a short time. And now, his own officers, his own fleet, were beginning to panic. From Earth, human forces continued their relentless strike. Orbital platforms, fighter squadrons, and hidden artillery launched synchronized attacks that tore apart remaining alien ships with deadly precision. The fleet was no longer advancing, it was retreating in disarray. Ships collided, weapons malfunctioned, and alarms screamed throughout the command centers of the invaders. And still, the humans pressed on. Deep inside the alien flagship, Commander Threx realized the impossible truth. The invaders, who had come to conquer Earth, were losing, not slowly, not marginally, but catastrophically. Within the first 2 hours of battle, humanity had turned the tide so completely that even the mightiest vessels of the fleet were falling. Fear spread like a virus among the alien ranks. Panic replaced strategy. Orders were ignored. Retreat became inevitable, and in that moment, the first whispers of surrender began to echo across the fleet. For the first time in history, a civilization had faced the full wrath of humanity and survived only by begging for mercy. The alien fleet was in full retreat. Ships that had once seemed unstoppable now fled in disarray, some barely holding together as they limped away from orbit. Commander Threx paced the bridge of his flagship, claws tapping against the metallic floor, his mind racing. Every calculated plan, every tactical advantage, had crumbled under the human assault. Orbital platforms, fighters, and Project Atlas had combined to create a level of destruction the invaders had never imagined. Signals began arriving across the fleet. First, a trickle, then a flood. Subordinate commanders, once confident in their ability to subdue Earth, now sent desperate messages pleading for guidance, begging for a chance to retreat, or requesting permission to surrender. Some signals were frantic, almost incoherent, expressing disbelief and fear. "We cannot hold them," one message read. "Our weapons fail. Shields collapse. Planet alive." Another echoed in a trembling tone. "We underestimated them. Please advise." Threx froze. His voice, usually commanding and unshakable, faltered. "This is impossible," he muttered. "This species. They're not supposed to be able to do this." An officer approached, eyes wide. "Commander, the humans are still attacking. Even as we retreat, they are destroying ships faster than we can escape." Outside the flagship, the scene was chaotic. Alien vessels, once perfectly aligned in formation, now drifted apart, some spinning out of control, others exploding as human energy beams cut through the void. The surviving ships fired desperately at the relentless human assault, but their weapons barely dented the defenses. Fighters darted between them, releasing pulse devices that disrupted shields and disabled weapon systems. Project Atlas fired again, a massive white beam tearing through the center of a cruiser, obliterating it in seconds. For the first time in his career, Thrax felt real fear. The humans were not just defending, they were dominating. Every attack, every maneuver, every calculated strike proved that Earth's defenders were far more formidable than any intelligence report had indicated. They had turned a primitive planet into a fortress, a weapon, and a trap. Then, another message arrived. This one from a high-ranking alien commander closer to the fleet's rear. "Commander Threx, we cannot continue. We must surrender. Our losses are catastrophic. Remaining forces cannot survive 3 hours more. We beg for mercy." Threx's claws tightened on the rail. Surrender. The thought was inconceivable. No civilization he had ever conquered had dared to plead. They had either been annihilated or enslaved. But now, here it was their first admission of defeat, coming from the very species they had deemed primitive. "Patch them through," he said, voice low. The officer hesitated. 10. Complete. A live channel opened. Hundreds of alien ships began transmitting simultaneously, each message overlapping with the next, filled with fear, despair, and desperation. The alien fleet, once a force of absolute power, was now begging for survival. Across the planet, human command centers watched the transmissions flood their systems. General Marcus Halle and his team observed the alien pleas, silently, knowing the victory was at hand. Yet the humans did not gloat. They had the upper hand, but the lesson of the battle was clear. Underestimating Earth or its people had almost cost them everything. Threx looked out the main viewport at the dwindling fleet. His pride burned hotter than any weapon. Yet even he could not ignore the truth. Humanity had turned the tables completely. Every tactical advantage the invaders had counted on had been neutralized. Every assumption of superiority had been shattered. "Send our terms," he finally ordered. "We accept surrender. But note, humanity is not merciful by nature." The humans were ready. Orbital platforms adjusted their firing arcs. Fighters hovered in strategic positions, and Project Atlas's massive energy beam pulsed, signaling readiness. Humanity had no intention of giving the aliens another chance to strike. The invaders had made their choice, and now the consequences would be absolute. Within minutes, the alien messages changed tone. Fear and panic gave way to pleading. Commanders begged not for victory, but for life. They offered anything, promised obedience, and sought mercy from a species they had once considered insignificant. It was a reversal of roles, so complete that even the humans felt a mix of awe and vindication. And all the while, the countdown clock continued its relentless march. Each second brought the end of the invasion closer. A demonstration of humanity's capability to not only survive but dominate, to turn the tide of a war that seemed lost almost before it began. From the skies above, the alien ships were trapped. They were exposed, battered, and broken. They had come with the arrogance of conquerors, and yet, in less than 3 hours, the very species they had intended to enslave had shattered their fleet, destroyed their ships, and brought them to their knees. In that moment, the world below watched silently. Earth's cities burned from the initial attacks, but from the devastation rose a display of unyielding strength. Humanity had proven that no force, no matter how advanced, could underestimate them and survive. The aliens' desperation filled the communication channels, their voices trembling, their messages simple. Mercy. Please. We surrender. Humanity. You are supreme. Forgive us. General Hale observed the flood of messages calmly. A slow smile spread across his face. It's over, he said quietly. They came to conquer Earth, and now they beg for mercy. The alien fleet was in complete disarray. Ships limped through orbit, shields flickering and engines barely functional. Communications channels were flooded with desperate pleas, repeated over and over. Surrender, mercy, forgiveness. Commander Threx stared at the screens, the scale of their defeat settling over him like a cold wave. Every plan, every strategy, every assumption of superiority had been crushed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. From Earth, humans did not hesitate. Orbital platforms continued their relentless assault, ensuring that no ship could recover, no formation could reorganize, no counterattack could be launched. Stealth fighters darted through the gaps between crippled vessels, releasing pulse devices that shut down weapon systems. Every remaining alien ship was marked, tracked, and neutralized if it moved or posed any threat. Humanity was methodical, efficient, and merciless in its control of the battlefield. Project Atlas fired again, a massive surge of energy tearing through the rear of the fleet. Several alien cruisers exploded simultaneously, their fragments scattering into space. Even ships that had attempted to retreat were caught in the crossfire. The invaders' greatest weapons, their most advanced technology, meant nothing against the combined defenses of Earth. Commander Threx finally raised his voice, the sound trembling with suppressed fury. Halt all offensive operations. Focus solely on survival. Evade and retreat immediately. But it was too late. The humans had already predicted the maneuvers. Fighters intercepted escape pads, while orbital platforms fired with surgical precision. Alien vessels collided with one another or were obliterated mid. The fleet that had invaded Earth hours ago was now a shattered remnant, barely holding together. Even as the aliens begged, humanity remained cautious. General Marcus Hale oversaw operations from NORAD, monitoring every movement of the crippled fleet. He issued orders not out of anger, but out of necessity. Do not allow them to regroup. Target only the vessels capable of flight. Do not destroy those that are surrendering. Alien communications became frantic, some attempting to negotiate for time, others promising obedience, their arrogance completely gone. We submit. Humanity. You are supreme. Spare us. We will comply with your terms. The humans responded with controlled restraint. Strike fighters maintained position, but their weapons were still trained on the fleet, a silent reminder that any deception would be met with instant retaliation. Orbital platforms continued to hum with energy, ready to fire at the first sign of betrayal. Project Atlas stood as a looming symbol of power, its massive beam still pulsing, capable of ending the fleet entirely if needed. Gradually, alien ships began lowering shields and powering down weapons. Signals confirming surrender spread through the fleet. Chaotic at first, then organized as the invaders realized their situation was irreversible. Commander Trix's image flickered across the communication channels, a rare display of vulnerability. His voice was firm but restrained. We yield. We surrender. Earth, you are victorious. From Earth, the response was concise and authoritative. General Hale addressed the alien fleet, his tone calm but unwavering. Your invasion has failed. You are to comply with Earth's directives. Any attempt to resist will result in complete annihilation. The aliens understood the meaning immediately. Their survival depended entirely on the humans' mercy. The fleet's arrogance, their confidence in conquest, and their sense of invincibility had all been destroyed in under 3 hours. Every ship that had once threatened Earth was now powerless, their crews dependent on the judgment of a species they had underestimated. As the surrender protocols were confirmed, the battlefield fell into a tense silence. The destruction had been total, yet humanity had maintained control, ensuring that no vessel could act against them again. Project Atlas powered down slowly, its glow fading but its presence remaining a stark reminder of Earth's defensive capabilities. Orbital platforms adjusted their positions, monitoring the remaining ships, while human fighters returned to secure positions, keeping watch over every movement. Commander Threx stared out at the planet below. The Earth that he had sought to dominate was untouched in its core, still alive. still defiant. He had expected fear, surrender, perhaps even panic. Instead, he had faced strategy, preparation, and overwhelming force. Humanity had turned every expectation upside down. Finally, the alien fleet transmitted one last message, almost inaudible, yet heavy with the weight of defeat. We underestimated you. Your species is not to be trifled with. Mercy, we beg for it. On Earth, General Halley allowed himself a small, controlled smile. The battle had been won, not through blind force, but through preparation, intelligence, and unity. Humanity had survived an invasion by a technologically superior alien race and had turned the tide so completely that the invaders now begged for their lives. The planet's people watched as the last of the alien vessels powered down, surrendered, or fled the solar system entirely. The threat had ended. The invaders who had come to conquer were now at the mercy of the species they had intended to destroy. Earth had not only survived it, had triumphed, as the last alien vessels powered down and drifted helplessly in orbit. Earth's defenders maintained a vigilant watch. Humanity had not taken any chances. Every ship, every platform, every fighter remained poised to respond instantly. The alien fleet, once so confident and terrifying, was now completely at humanity's mercy. The invaders who had arrived with arrogance and the intent to conquer were trembling before a species they had underestimated. Commander Threx aboard the crippled flagship sat in silence. His claws rested on the command rail, the weight of defeat pressing down on him. The crew around him whispered quietly, some trembling, some staring blankly at the monitors. Every plan, every expectation had failed. They had assumed humanity would panic, that they would be unable to defend themselves, that their primitive weapons and tactics would crumble before alien might. Instead, the humans had turned the planet into a fortress, a weapon, and a trap that had annihilated the bulk of the fleet in less than 3 hours. A communication channel was opened by Earth's forces. General Marcusale's voice resonated clearly across the fleet. Commander Threx, your forces are at a complete disadvantage. Your fleet is crippled. You have been given the chance to surrender. Compliance will ensure the survival of your species. Resistance will result in total annihilation. Threx hesitated, the words hanging in the air. After a long moment, he finally spoke, his voice heavy with defeat. We submit. Earth, you have shown us power we cannot overcome. We beg for mercy. The humans were calm but firm. Orbital platforms adjusted their positions to monitor the alien ships. Fighters hovered in strategic patrols, and Project Atlas remained active, a looming reminder of Earth's strength. No one aboard Earth's command centers celebrated prematurely. They had won the battle, but the invaders' presence still required careful management. Every alien vessel, every crew, was now under strict observation. On the ground, humanity's leaders coordinated efforts to secure any alien technology that had survived and to communicate with the surrendered crews. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel carefully documented every piece of alien machinery, analyzing their weapons, propulsion systems, and energy sources. Humanity had survived an encounter that could have ended civilization, and now they had the opportunity to learn from it. In orbit, the aliens' transmissions were filled with desperate pleas and promises. We will obey your commands. We will provide knowledge and assistance. Please, spare us. Spare our people. We underestimated your species. It was a stark reversal. The invaders who had believed themselves supreme were now entirely dependent on those they had sought to dominate. Back on Earth, General Halley addressed his officers. We must maintain discipline and restraint. These beings came to destroy us. They now come under our protection. We have won. Yes, but let this victory be a lesson. Never underestimate humanity. For the people of Earth, the news spread quickly across cities, towns, and rural areas. Screens displayed live updates of the surrendered alien fleet, images of human orbital platforms and strike fighters still guarding the remains, and the words of Threxis a final surrender Masag. Citizens watched in awe, pride, and disbelief. Humanity had survived an unprecedented threat, and in doing so, had proven that intelligence, strategy, and courage could triumph over even the most technologically superior force. In the weeks that followed, the alien invaders were carefully studied, their ships dismantled or adapted for peaceful purposes, and their crews integrated under strict supervision. Humanity gained knowledge that would forever change technology, science, and defense. But more importantly, the species' confidence had grown. For the first time in history, humans had faced extinction and not only survived, they had turned the would-be conquerors into Commander Threx, once proud and unyielding, remained in orbit, watching the planet he had sought to conquer. The humans below had humbled him completely. Their planet was scarred. Yes, but alive. Their people were resilient, cunning, and united. They were a species that could not be crushed. So Isali. And now, for the first time, Threx understood a truth he could not ignore. Earth was not a world to be conquered, it was a force to be respected. From space to the surface, Earth exhaled. Cities slowly rebuilt, populations celebrated survival, and the skies cleared of the fires of invasion. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged victorious, a species united in the face of impossible odds. The alien threat had been defeated, and the message was clear. Anyone who underestimated Earth would pay the price. And somewhere deep in space, the invaders who had once looked down on this blue planet whispered to one another, terrified and humbled, "We came to conquer." And in 3 hours, we were brought to our knees. Mercy, we begged for it, and they gave none. Only control, only strength. Humanity is not a species to challenge. Earth had won, utterly, decisively, and the galaxy would remember it.